Hey guys, in this video, this is going to be a little bit of a different video than usual. This is actually an idea that I was having the other day, and my partner, I was chatting through it with my partner, and she was like, well, you should make a video out of that. So here's me making a video out of that, because I know how to listen when I'm told what I need to do. No, I'm just kidding. But, I'm about to do a big photography project. It's going to be huge in terms of time commitment and da-da-da-da-da for me. I haven't done a photography at scale thing before, and what this is going to be is all the photography for one of my friends' businesses. And what he does is children's photography, children's soccer. So that's kind of turning into a more necessary and integral part of what they're doing by bringing me on to do it, because they're totally changing up the way they're distributing images, the way they're charging for images. They're taking a lot more ownership over all that, which makes the whole thing a lot more profitable for them, but also for me. And so, I could end up making a fair amount of money off of it. And so I was thinking, well, what if I make the max I'm expecting is feasible? Like if everybody bought every image of their kid at the prices that we have, could make a fair amount of money, that'd be great. So what could I do for fun with that? And I was thinking, well, what if I get one lens? Just one. Now, I'm not going to think about the price just yet. I'm going to think about what one lens would I want to get. And so, I was thinking, and I pulled up the Sigma Art Series lenses for EF, because I have the MC11, which I use all the time. I'm really funny. I intentionally put lenses and cameras together that I have that I don't use frequently, to force myself to use them, to say, do I like this? Do I like this lens when I use it this way? Do I like this camera body when I use it this way? Just to kind of keep testing the waters of my own preferences. And I'm looking more for what focal lengths do I like to use? What kind of size lenses do I like to use? What kind of, all the apertures, everything. So, that's really fun for me. So Sigma Art would be where I would go with on first blush, right? That was the first page I pulled up. And then I pulled up the Sony E-mount mirrorless lenses, full frame FE mount lenses. And, I'm really drawn right now to, obviously, fast primes. I'm a huge bokeh whore. Huge fan of fast primes. But also, really wide-angle stuff, like 16 to 35, 2.8. Sigma's 24 to 70 f2.8 OS is really attractive, mostly because of the price and the focal range and the, marginal stabilization, and the fact that I can use it on my 6300 with everything updated and everything. I probably have to pick up a dock for that to make sure everything was updated properly, but that's all right. So, I was thinking, and so Sigma doesn't have a 16 to 35, but they have a 24 to 70. Sony has a 24 to 70, but if, a $1,300 option exists, I don't necessarily want to go with the $2,200 option. But if I'm going to go with the 16 to 35, why not go with the 2.8 G Master? But that's $2,200. But then I was like, well, what if I go with the 12 to 24 from Sony, the f4? Problem with that being that it's f4. I want fast lenses. I want faster than f4 lenses. That's what most of my lenses are. Most of the mostly used lenses are that I have, the 24 to 105 and the 70 to 200. So, I'm just nixing that thought for right now. Thinking about the 12 to 24, that would be a great full frame lens. It'd be kind of niche. It'd be a great start to build the 12 to 200 set that I'd want to get. I think I could get away with f4 at 12 to 24, and I think I could get away with f4 at 70 to 200, but I know I want 2.8 between 24 and 70 for sure. So got to thinking about that with my Alpha 6300, that would turn into an 18 to 35, 18 to 36. So it'd basically be a 16 to 35 f4 on my 6300. And then on top of that, I could clear zoom through that 2 more times, right? So up to 2 times. So then it would be, like a 36 to 70. So I could basically get out of this lens, assuming down the road I can pick up a full frame E-mount body, I could get basically 12 to 70 out of this one lens. hypothetically. Now, you're not going to have everything perfect with everything, and you're not going to be able to resolve as much detail on an APS-C sensor as you will on a full-frame sensor, even with a really, really good full-frame camera. Don't ask me why, I don't know, but it's the truth. So check out DxOMark and really dive into them like I've been doing. It's startling. But that could be a great option. That could get everything. And the distortion at 12 might be a lot, but I think it could be really fun to play around with creatively. I mostly shoot at about 50 mil equivalent, though. That's what I mostly shoot on my 60, and that's what I mostly shoot on the 6300. What I've got on there now is a 30 mil f1.4 from Sigma. That kind of equates to 45, so it's about a 50 equivalent. I shoot 50 on there all the time as well. I have a 50 f2.8 STM, it's right here, that I put on there via the MC11. I also have an FD mount, 50 mil. It's lying around here somewhere. It's actually on here, on an AE1 that I really love. This is probably the sharpest lens that I own. I adore it. So that's a pretty attractive idea, right? Is that 12 to 24 f4, but it's got f4. We got to take that into account at some point, right? I don't want an f4 lens. I know if I'm gonna get to that point eventually, if I'm gonna get to that focal range eventually, I'm gonna need to do that, right? And the thing about the Sony versus the Sigma in that 12 to 24 range is that the Sony is actually lighter and smaller and very potentially better optically than the Sigma. The Sigma is going to be great, of course, but it's big and heavy and all that stuff. So, and it's 11 to 24, I think. So you get a little bit more on the wide end, but it's also f4. I don't like f4. So 16 to 35. Well, let's take all the 16 to 35s into account, right? There's the Canon L 16 to 35 f2.8 L2. There's the L3. There's the Sony G Master 2.8. There's the Sony Zeiss 2.8 or f4. Sony Zeiss f4. What else is there? No, that's about it. So those lenses, they look really good, right? Like there's a huge resolution increase from the L2 to the L3 on the Canon end. So at that point, it's like I'm gonna be biased towards the L3 because my current fixation is not only on fast but also on sharp. So that L3 would have to be the one I'd want to go with, but that's $2,000, and I really don't want to give Canon $2,000 of my monies right now. You know what I'm saying? So those are kind of washed off the table. But then there's the Sony 16-35 f2.8. That's $2,200. The f4 version, which kind of fits a lot better within the size factor that I'm wanting to espouse with my mirrorless cameras. That's going to be $1,400. Problem is that the G Master retains its value a lot better if I want to sell it down the line. The Zeiss does not. That drops like $400, $500 immediately onto the used market. So that doesn't retain its value very well at all. Now the big problem is I still have a Canon camera, right? Like I don't want to completely abandon a system that I still have around by picking up, an FE lens. Although an FE lens would be perfect on a 6300. So I'm thinking, I keep talking about Fuji. Fuji keeps popping up in a lot of my videos and a lot of my thinking because they're a very logical addition to any comparison. When you're being comparative within a certain space, it's a very logical system and brand to add into the mix, to just add another one for diversity and completeness's sake. So the X-T2 would have to be that camera for me, because now I know there's going to be someone who's like, oh, you're a snob, you have to have the best one, and it's like, well, maybe that's true. I'll grant that, maybe that's true. But what the rationale is in my own mind is that I want all the dials. Only the X-T2 has all the dials. All of the other cameras only have 1 or 2 dials. And I want to be able to, if I'm going to go with Fuji, I want to go with Fuji, right? Like they have a 10 to 15, 10 to 18, something like that equates to 16 to 35, that's an f4. Problem is, you can't see the numbers on the aperture ring. So that immediately got nixed, although that would be a fantastic lens to pop on the front of there, it's f4. But also, it doesn't have the notated aperture ring, and that's a huge part of it for me. Like, that's why I love, where'd it go? That's why I love this 50 f1.4, because I love seeing the aperture on there as I'm shooting and manually manipulating that by sight, right? So I'd have to go with the 23, the 35, or the 56 or something, right? 50, whatever. Or I could go with the 16 to 55 f2.8 WR, whatever it is. And you know what? That got me thinking, because if I could do that, you know, within the scope of this fantasy, right? I could pick up an X-T2 in one of these lenses, and that would be within the same scope as something like, you know, one of these really expensive Sony lenses. So not exactly the same, right? But it would be near enough as to fit into the fantasy. And so I got to thinking, and it's like, that would equate to an f4 on a full frame body, which I'm not a huge fan of. I don't know if I could adapt an 18 to 35. I don't want to get an 18 to 30. I have the 50 to 100 from Sigma right here. And for as good of a lens as this is, it's probably the single biggest mistake of $1,000 that I've ever made. I really, really hate myself for having bought this lens, because although it's fantastic, it's too big, it's too heavy, it's too unwieldy. I never take this thing out to shoot, except for when I make myself. Granted, I do make myself take it out to say, okay, are there saving graces? And there are, but I don't want to use it. And I don't want 50 to 100 as often as I want something like a 16 to 35. So, but then I don't want to buy an 18 to 35 from Sigma if I'm trying to go full frame, right, on my Sony system, because I want to trade, you know, the 60 Mark I out for an A7 III down the line. So assuming that it has 4K 30, a lot of autofocus points, and but that doesn't matter right now. So the point is that I don't want to like keep investing in APS-C lenses. I want to get into full frame lenses that I can use on a lot of things. So if that means, you know, a Sigma Art 50 that I use on here, that's f1.4, that will port really well over, that's fine. But the problem is I have a lot of 50mm lenses, or 50mm equivalent lenses. That's 50mm equivalent. I got one here. I got a 50 within the 24 to 105. I got the FD mount one. Yeah, that's a lot. And my partner has an 18 to 55 that has a 50 in there. So there's a lot of 50 equivalent options that I could go with. So I really started thinking about the X-T2 a lot more, because, you know, you could pick up a 23 or 35 for that pretty cheap. You know, it could be worth going. I think I would want to go with the f1.4 version rather than the f2, because the f2 translates to 2.8 and the 1.4 translates to 1.8 in full frame equivalence terms. So I think I'd rather go with that one. But, you know, again, it's just a fantasy. But I think that if, you know, the maximum potential earnings happen out of this gig, I think it could be fun to go for an X-T2 and a 35mm f1 or 36, whatever it is, f1.4, because I think that could be, you know, a great combo to have as you know, something to put in your pocket, walk around with. I think if I'm gonna, I think too though that I could very easily see myself going with a 16 to 55 out of them, because they're gonna be coming out with an 8 to 18. I think that's right, 8 to 18 f2.8. They got the 50 to 140 f2.8. So they have the whole 2.8 range covered in terms of light gathering, right? Not necessarily depth of field because of the image sensor size, but that's a different matter entirely. So, you know, I think there's two ways that could go, right? The X-T2 and the 35, or the X-T2 and the 16 to 55. And really it was rather quick how immediately I jumped off of the Sony and Sigma lenses to go to Fuji. The thing is that I really want the colors. Like I'm not shooting in RAW anymore. That, you know, it's not because I hate RAW, it's not because I don't think RAW is really useful, it's not because I don't think I could get more out of my images with RAW. All those are true, right? But I don't want to process my damn images. I get more pleasure. I so much enjoy the process of taking an image rather than processing it and all that stuff. Like, I take a camera with me almost everywhere I go. And I want to take pictures almost everywhere I go. Even if it's of the same thing. I just like doing it. I just like the act of taking a picture. I don't know, like maybe that makes me crazy, but I just do. And so the Fuji system really kind of speaks to that, because you have to be really involved in the act of taking a picture in order to get your exposure. But then there's also the color. So like on my Sony and on the Canon both, the JPEG options are super limited. Like I don't want to mess with, toy picture, creative style mode, profile, whatever. Like I don't think those are engaging or entertaining or anything. I like the film simulations that Fuji does. This thing doesn't even have picture profiles hardly, and the ones you can customize are no good. But by comparison to Fuji film simulations, I really, really like the idea of the film simulations, the Acros, the Velvia, whatever it is. I think they're just cool. I don't know all the names. I don't know what all they do, but I think they're really cool. Provia is one. Oh shoot, I know another one. It doesn't matter. So, from the idea of shooting in JPEG, the Fuji system really appeals. From the idea of just loving the visceral process of shooting, Fuji makes a lot of sense. Now, I've kind of circled back in the last 2 or 3 days. This was a couple of days ago that I was thinking about this, talking about this. The tabs have lived up on my computer, but I haven't really dove into it quite as much. And I'm kind of at the point, though, where I am making money off of cameras. Between using them for this, I am making money off of this, which is great. Not a whole bunch. YouTube ad revenue is not very much. As well as with photography and videography. So, I want to get rid of this guy. I want to get rid of the Canon system. I want to get, and the 50-100. I want to get into Sony full frame. I think the A7 III is the camera for me. I think I've thought a lot about what would be like 2 to 3 lenses that would cover everything. That if I could only have 3 lenses, what would they be? And I have lists and charts and if this then that, all that kind of thing. And what it kind of boils down to is like 28, 50, 135, or 35, 85, or 16 to 35, 24 to 70, and 70 to 200. And I'm biased towards the zooms from a use perspective, but I'm biased towards the primes for a convenience perspective, and especially on a Sony body. The 28 f2, superb, absolutely superb. The 55 f1.8 from Zeiss, same cost just about as the Sigma 50 f1.4. Also, like, class-leading superbity happening right there. So, and then I'd pick up the Sigma 135, and then that could do double duty on the 6300 if it ever had to, and all that, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. Point being that, like, if I'm going to have to get a camera and lens, if part of this conversation is not just for fun, it's also for, like, real life, I think I'd go with the A7 III when that comes out, because, I like the 24 megapixels. I think the 20 megapixels on here is just a few too few. I want full frame. I do. I know I'm a dinosaur and a total bokeh whore and a full frame whore. Whatever you want to call me, it's true. I way prefer full frame. That's just me. I can't get out of my head. Some marketer somewhere is cackling their ass off for doing such a good job at that, but it's true. So I think I'd want to go with the Sony A7 III and with a couple of lenses. I think 28, 55, 135 would be fine. I think 24 to 70, 16 to 35 would be fine. I don't typically use the telephoto options, really. I kind of stick to wanting to be really wide and 50 mil. There are some times when it's like, let's try to zoom all the way in. Like I've been trying to take some more pictures of like the stars, for example. And obviously the stars you don't want to zoom in, right? But for the moon you do. I've been trying to take pictures of the moon, and that's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. So, you could get your clear zoom out of your Sony. You could get a lot of stuff out of a Sony body that would make something like a 24 to 70 imminently much more feasible to be useful for a lot of things, especially if you're going to shoot in JPEG, because you can only use clear zoom in JPEG. Is the idea with that. So, it's a complicated issue, right? The zooms are more useful. I use the zooms that I already have more often, but I rely on primes for serious work. So that's going to be a little bit of a difficult bridge to cross, but I think I'll be able to. I hope I'll be able to. I think for work I'd want an A7 III. I think for play I'd want a Fuji X-T2 and a 35 or the 16 to 55 f2.8. So yeah, or f1.4 on the 35. So yeah, I think that's about all I got. I just thought that could be a podcasty type approach to a video. So thank you very much for your time and for your attention. Please don't hesitate to like, comment, smash the subscribe button. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one.